I'm gonna be 76 this fall, and I'd be happy to be 70 again. Like 70 seems young to me, you know? Yes, you're older, but you're not old. I see a lot more people that are not giving up than, say, 20 years ago. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I think people are getting it, that you don't give up.
It's right around the time that we started Century Ride. I happened to be watching my favorite male rider, Rémy Métailler, and you were riding things that I don't think I have the bravery to ride. And I was looking at you, and then I realized we have to talk to Betty because there are just too few examples of people demonstrating how amazing life can be when we get into those years that people, really associate with just decline. When you were my age, when you were in your 50s, did you ever think that you would still be riding not only a mountain bike, but the North Shore?
I think I just kind of took it for granted. And also I think I was kind of more in the now. In one respect, I didn't envision I'd still be riding, but in the other sense, another sense, I didn't really think about it. I don't know if that makes any sense.
So going back, can you give us your background story about how you ended up here?
So I discovered a lot of people that did sports when I went to university, and so that's when I really started hiking and backpacking and playing tennis, and I started weight training then, and started mountaineering in my early 20s, discovered windsurfing in my late 20s, and then I decided I really wanted to get into it. So I was a flight attendant at the time, so I transferred to Hawaii. That was became my base. So I started competing and sailing in the waves, windsurfing. And my ex-husband gave me a mountain bike for Christmas just before my son was born, but I never rode it really. I just didn't have time to, and I wasn't interested. I really used my free time to ride my road bike. But we did start doing a lot of summer camping, car camping, when Hayden was really little, like from his first summer as a baby. And I always took my mountain bike with me. It was always on the roof of the car. So I rode it around the campgrounds and around the local trails that weren't much. And I just found, as a single parent at that time, I just didn't have time to exercise myself, look after Hayden, go to work, exercise the dog. So I decided to kind of combine the two, and then I got a real mountain bike. And I don't know, that was like, I was around about 45. So, and then, I just sort of really just dove into this sport because I was hooked from the get-go.
I was really surprised to learn that you were originally a road cyclist. So were you putting in some big miles before you went to mountain biking?
Yeah, I used to go on road biking trips. My husband and I would go to Arizona, and we'd do 100-mile days. And I just loved road biking so much. People were talking about mountain biking, and I just thought, oh my gosh, like there's just no comparison. Well, what a snoot I was. But, riding a road bike's kind of like driving a Ferrari, and being on a mountain bike is like riding this ultimate off-road vehicle.
I want to know, where does the bravery come from?
You have to want it. Whatever it is you're doing, you have to want it. And if your heart's in it, it kind of, I think it surpasses all the stuff that maybe goes on in your brain, all the dialogue that makes you, hesitate. So I think if you're just really passionate about something, you just go for it.
It's funny because, just coming back to Rémy for a second, just by watching him ride, and obviously like his terrain and my terrain here in Ontario is completely different. However, there are some like really steep things that I would have balked at before. I really learned from him. He has this whole thing like creep, peep, be up on your legs, and then bend your legs and push through the compression.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I was just riding right into those things. And like, here I am at 56, 100% braver than I was at 46. So,
well, you build on your skills, you build on your confidence.
Right.
Obviously, otherwise you would, if you don't use, training and lessons and building your skills, you're going to scare yourself off. So
Well,
yeah.
that's one of the things I love about you is that in that ride that you do, the video you did with Remy, you said to him, give me some tips if you think my technique could be better. And you realize like I watch you ride is think I want to be able to ride like you. And now I know that I've got a lot of years ahead of me to accomplish my mission. But also always be learning, right? We're never
Absolutely.
done. We're
Yes.
never done
Yeah.
learning.
I know. I just went to Ride Lab, which is a women's get together with instruction for 3 days with lots of pros teaching, and I loved it. I mean, especially because I come from old school, so some of those techniques are ingrained. The
What's old
survival
school?
techniques. Old school
What?
is, the way with the geometry of bikes for one thing. That's old
Right.
school. So the way we used to have to ride to adapt to that geometry, the bikes and the brakes rather, all that has really changed, and the trails have really changed. I mean, there's still some very janky trails out there, of course, but
Yeah.
which is kind of my comfort zone. Like my comfort zone is not, even though I rode A line a lot at the Whistler Bike Park, in my 50s and 60s, it wasn't my comfort zone. I went pretty fast, but still, because we didn't have that when we first started riding.
Let's talk about our mental game a bit. What happens sort of between the ears with people becomes the biggest limiting factor. I think a lot of people get to a certain age and they start to think about what they can't do. I'm always talking about normal aging is not normal. It's just people accepting what they think is normal, which is, why it's so important to see somebody like you.
Well, I think people as they age, they need to expect more of themselves. For instance, if you have a crash, like get back on the horse. Just don't give up. Just don't give up. You might have to, hold back a little bit. And you may regain your confidence, you may regain it, but if you don't beat yourself up. You're still out there in the forest riding mountain bike trails. Maybe you're not riding double blacks anymore. Maybe you're just riding blacks, or you may be riding blues, but you're still out there. I mean, I've had to go from not so much because, but it could be because of having, a few crashes or accidents or injuries rather. But like I just know I don't ride double blacks anymore. There may be the odd double black feature on a black trail, but generally speaking, I don't ride double blacks anymore. And that was a hard transition for me to give that up, because I was riding with people who still rode double blacks, like the people I've ridden with for a long time. That was really a hard transition, because I loved all those features, but now I'm totally comfortable riding blacks, and I'm very happy to be at the level. And I know that and my plan is to ride blacks throughout my 70s, and then hopefully still ride blues throughout my 80s, greens in my 90s. That's my goal. We definitely have to keep riding our bike, or if you can't ride your bike, just don't let go of something you're passionate about.
Yeah.
Keep active.
Yeah. And I do want to say that. So hopefully there's some people watching here that haven't found their thing that lights them up. And whatever that is, it's like start challenging yourself and then go with it, right? So a lot of people who will be watching this will be road cyclists and gravel cyclists, and like that's amazing. So the challenge for you could be a century ride this summer, right? Or a century rider 3. You never know. So I do want to talk about the elephant in the room for those people who think mountain bikers like us are crazy, because my road cycling friends do think that I'm crazy. And so I'm going to set up a collection of your injuries and let me see if I've got them all.
These
So
are just
early,
mountain biking injuries.
right,
Okay.
right. I know there's another one in there too. So early on, you broke your arm and dislocated your shoulder. You've torn your rotator cuff a few times. You've broken your hand and broken the opposite wrist, I believe, and there's plates somewhere in here, both sides.
Correct.
Scarred your legs, but that's just par for the course when you're learning to mountain bike.
Right.
And broken lots of ribs. That I saw on Instagram, just looking at my notes here because I'm going to quote you. You said, "Oops, play hard, pay hard, but darn it, I'll be back just in time for riding in the snow." And I went, yes. So I want to know, like, let me contrast that. Let me contrast this. This is a comment from a guy, a gentleman. I read this a couple of years ago and it's stuck in my head ever since. He said he was 64 and he said, "I love riding my bike, but now I'm in my 60s and I think I have to give it up because I might fall and break something."
Oh.
And I thought that was so sad,
Yeah.
but potentially more risky than staying on the bike. What do you think?
I think if you keep the momentum going, be consistent, like always just stay on your bike. If you do have a crash and you do injure yourself, then as I said before, you need to get back on the horse. If you have a crash, yeah, we're all going to crash. It's going to happen. But if you know what your limits are, and you're always going to push your limits because that's kind of the thrill. But you have all this experience behind you, and you've got to keep going. You got to keep doing it.
I agree because, who cares what I think? Let's look at the comments of people that are commenting to you in some of your videos. Les Terma 1608 says, "All good until you." This is this is funny actually, because let me step back for a sec. So many people are like, "Oh man, this is so inspiring. I want to keep going like this." But there are a couple that it's all good until you crash at this age and you're done. I'm 72. Or this man, "The F is wrong with people. One fall and she's dead or maimed for the rest of her life. This is just irresponsible."
Oh.
That's hilarious, and that's not indicative of what people think. They wanna keep doing this stuff. I
Right,
think we
right.
can.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think about it. I think, okay, I could stop riding blacks and just ride blues, but there's no guarantee. I mean, you can hurt yourself in a little pebble. The thing about riding blacks and riding the level you're comfortable with, you're focused. When you ride something easier, sometimes you're relaxed and you're not paying attention as much. So, I mean, that's the one thing I love about the sport is you have to be focused all the time. So, what are you going to do? You're going to stop riding your bike because you might fall? I mean,
Yeah,
you could
totally
be
agree.
25 and fall and crash on your bike. You can crash at any age. And yes, your bones are more brittle as you get older, but you're going to heal. You'll heal. It is a drag to crash at this age because it is longer to recover. And I always worry about, like, I've had, my both injuries I've had on my arms this last year and a half. The outcome's not great. I have permanent damage in both of them, but I can still ride my bike. So
Right.
I just don't have proper articulation to do other activities. So, but I can still ride my bike. So,
Well, I'm always telling our audience that, as cyclists, whatever kind of bike you're riding, we're so much like probably in the 90th percentile compared to people our age, because most people really aren't doing actively involved in a sport once they hit middle age and beyond. And really, when we're talking about risk reward, there's such a big risk in not doing anything because you're so much, you're more likely to put on weight, and weight gain is associated with metabolic disease. And you've got a whole host of other things that become risk factors for you. So, I mean, you're not out of the woods by doing nothing.
no. I think you're more at risk by doing nothing. You're
Exactly.
you're it's, mentally and physically, you're just gonna atrophy.
People in their 40s and 50s start talking like, well, I'm getting older now, so can't do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
can't do that. And I actually had coffee with like a very dear friend of ours. She's a decade younger than us, and her boyfriend. And he said to me, I'm turning 50, and I can't help but feel like, my best years are behind me. And I feel the exact opposite. Because when I turned 50, I said, I'm pretty sure that our best years are ahead of us. Because there's a lot of struggle in the first part of life. Like,
Yeah, I know. Life
you're
is
learning
tough.
to do everything.
Yeah.
Life is tough. You're
Yeah.
overcoming things.
Yeah.
What would you tell somebody who's sort of at that midpoint, those middle age in life, and they're feeling a little down about that?
I hear that a lot because I bike with a lot of 30 and 40-year-olds, and I hear them say sometimes, yeah, I'm getting old. I'm 40, I'm getting old. Well, I mean, I just say, I'm going to be 76 this fall, and like, I'd be happy to be 70 again. Like, 70 seems young to me, But yeah, so I'm just trying to encourage them to realize that you're not old. Yes, you're older, but you're not old. And as long as you keep yourself active, then you keep your body nimble and strong and fit. I see a lot more people that are not giving up than say 20 years ago. I think the baby boomers they're not giving up. There so many more seniors out doing stuff and continuing to do stuff than there used to be. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I think people are getting it, that you don't give up.
I think you're right because we were just riding one of my favorite places to ride in Ontario, which is the Hydro Cut, which is probably an hour away from Toronto. And they're building all these features and everything, things we don't usually get here. I'm seeing a lot of people that they're definitely in their 60s all of a sudden riding all this stuff. And it's so exciting. People my age, like Gen X, we're the generation that grew up with mountain bikes. Like they just hit the market then. And now I'm seeing those people still riding. So I think that that's a really good sign. You posted something really interesting that you used to hide your age because you are riding with people decades younger than you. Of course you are.
Yeah.
That's just kind of logical at this point.
Yeah.
But you hurt yourself in a gardening accident and you severed some tendons. And apparently you also do extreme gardening.
Yeah. I hurt myself gardening just as much as mountain biking.
But it was really the medical community kind of saying, well, really, how strong do you need to be? And you said, I need to be strong. I'm a mountain biker. And they basically said to you, well, you should probably find a different sport. And then I love this because you came home and you sent them Patagonia's feature film about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The surgeon was an unusual character. And when I went back to get a new splint on my arm, the physiotherapist was making a new splint that would allow me to keep my arm straight instead of bent. And I said, oh, so can I start riding the stationary bike and going hiking? Because I wasn't allowed to do anything for a month. And they said, you're back into a 90-degree splint. You can't be doing that stuff yet. And he was sitting right there, the surgeon. And he goes, yeah, and she's going to ride her bike into her 90s. So I knew he had watched the video.
So we just have to keep pushing on. So I want to know, I think you said not long ago, like no way to e-bikes. But now you've got an e-bike.
It enables you to ride more. It's like you can ride an e-bike on a rest day, for instance. Or I can ride my e-bike when I go with really fit people that are doing a climb because I can't keep up to, the 30 and 40-year-olds climbing. So I go on my e-bike. And it's just super fun. Like whatever it takes to keep you in the sport, as far as I'm concerned. So I see a lot
100%.
Yeah, I see a lot of people in their 60s riding e-bikes, and they're riding blacks on their e-bikes or double blacks, and they're just really a lot of fun. I mean, unfortunately they're expensive, but ideally I think if you could have both bikes, but
So you're
yeah,
still riding both, right? Your regular mountain
absolutely.
bike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's an adaptation that people can make when they get to a certain point that keeps them in the game, right?
Absolutely, and they're
So,
making them lighter and lighter and lighter with still a significant amount of torque and power and wattage.
yeah.
So, yeah, the industry around e-bikes is evolving pretty quickly.
Yeah, and Remy rides his e-bike a lot. It's not just an age thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that a few of the commenters have picked up on an element of what makes you you, and it's a theme that runs through the comments, and it's about play, which I think is like fitness for the soul. We have fitness for our
absolutely.
body, but I think
Yeah,
play is fitness for the soul. And
yeah.
I want to read you a couple of them. Um, Deborah 628 says, Betty, you're amazing. I am a female mountain biker in my 60s living in Ontario. Hi, Deborah. Hope to see you on the trails. I've never ridden anything like this trail. Wow. Trail riding is all about having fun and enjoying the experiences. Too many people forget to play. It's the offset to the work and responsibilities we've shouldered for years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I'll add a second one. Abitibi Doug says, what you see here is a fine example of how you don't stop doing fun things when you get old, but rather you get old when you stop doing fun things.
Oh, that's beautiful. So true. So true. We grow
Isn't
up
that?
with yeah, that's so beautiful. We grow up with a sense of play, and somewhere along the line, people lose sight of it. Yeah, it's too many people. They put their whole life on hold because they have to work, but and then they save it for their retirement. But you have to play your whole life.
But then
You have,
they get to retirement and they don't have the health to do the things they always thought that they would do.
that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So I feel like when I sort of in my research for this, I feel like you kind of nailed the sort of work-life balance early in your life. Do you
I
think
know.
that's
I just feel so fortunate to have had the lifestyle. But I knew when I graduated from university that, well, my landlord was an airline pilot, and his wife had been a flight attendant. You weren't allowed to be married in those days. And I just said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to go to another year of university to become a teacher. Well, I just felt I was too young, too immature. And so he said, well, why don't you join the airlines? And, I said to him, I said, the only thing I knew is I did not want to work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That was my one parameter. And he said, join the airlines. So I did. And I really wanted to be kind of like more of an academic in my career, in my life. I wanted to go back and get my master's, but I just got hooked. I was just going to do it for 2 years, but I got hooked into the lifestyle, and I just stuck at it for 37 years, and it was a really
wow.
great life. And it was a perfect job for being a single mom.
I'm going to move now into sort of the more tactical side of things with sort of cardio and strength and stability because like the overwhelmingly the comments are all 75. What? She looks like 45. She looks decades younger. And I mean, we all want that.
I hear that a lot. Oh, you don't look your age, but um, I don't know. I have a problem with that phrase. I think it should be you don't walk your age. It's not your face, it's how you carry yourself, how you move, how you feel.
Yes.
I'd be very proud to people say, like, you don't move like your age.
What I'm going to do is I want to show this post that you on from Instagram of you rolling this enormous slab. Let me put it this way. You have your helmet on. I can't tell if I didn't know who was rolling that slab. I just want to imprint that in my brain so that the next steep thing that I have to do is I want to emulate the way you're moving. Where is that kind of fluidity coming from? Are you doing yoga? Are you stretching? What are you doing sort of to maintain that flexibility?
Well, it's very important to stretch. I mean, I've been an intermittent stretcher yoga person all my life since, my early 20s, but it's never been enough. I'm mad at myself for not being more flexible. But I think also like there's that kind of flexibility, but the mental flexibility. You have when you go out on the trail, you just have to think loose. Like sometimes if something's scary, you kind of stiffen up. You just got to think loose.
I would say ever since I was injured, I am like committed to stretching after. It's not a lot,
Yeah, it
but I
doesn't take
do
a
it
lot.
right. I do it every time just to
Yeah.
keep, being a well-oiled machine because I know
Yeah.
what it feels like to not
Yeah.
be that. 99.9% of the comments, like they're all positive, but people have opinions. And this
Yes.
one I find hilarious. Obviously, why she looks great and has good shape. It's very simple. Jeans, all caps. Jeans, jeans, jeans is her 85% success. That's why some people could smoke all their lives and die at over 100, or go through the war, or handle with hunger, disease. Jeans. So, Betty, did you just get a lucky hand in life?
I never thought of myself as an athlete because when I was growing up, to my 20s and 30s, people didn't call themselves athletes unless you were on the Olympic rowing team or whatever. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, one of my friends said to me that she thought that I was one of the best recreational athletes. And I went, oh, I guess maybe I am an athlete.
I saw you last fall when you broke was it your wrist that you broke?
Yes. Yeah.
And you were in the gym lifting weights. And you mentioned that it's so critical. And I'm just wondering, are you keeping that up? Are you, like you mentioned that you started strength training young. I didn't do that. But is that something that's important to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I think I've said to you before, when I was in my early 20s, late teens, I decided that in those days you called it exercise. Now you call it working out or fitness or whatever. But I decided that exercise is my life insurance policy to be able to go through my old age being active. And I look back now and I thought that was quite forward thinking of me and that era. I think it's part genes, part environment. I mean, I grew up with the, there was no such word as can't. I heard that from my
Right.
parents. No such word as can't. So I grew up with a very can-do attitude, and it's not over till it's over, and do your best, and don't give up, that sort of thing. And my mom was she never did sports, but she was a really hard worker, and she took up tennis at like 50 and became a really good tennis player and was still
Oh, I love
playing at
that.
87. And
Oh my God.
my dad was a skier and he was a real outdoors man. So yeah, I think it's part genes, part environment.
You also said diet was part of one of your insurance policies. People were asking in the comments, what do you eat? And people were saying, I bet she doesn't eat any candy, any chocolate. So what's the secret around diet?
Oh, well, I was really lucky because in my 20s I discovered this book that Adele Davis, I think that was her name, wrote. She was a very early nutritionist. So I read that book, and in my early 20s I just decided that I was going to start eating better. And then by my early 30s, I had completely eliminated meat from my diet. And then when my son graduated from high school, I eliminated chicken. So, and I very rarely will eat fish now, but mostly I have a plant-based diet. And so, yes, I decided a long time ago that, nutrition is very key. It's very key. A crappy diet, you can feel really sluggish, for instance. So it's not just, building proper muscles and cells. It's, how you feel food
Right.
feeds how you feel.
And you mentioned earlier about your sort of recovery days, and I really don't mind structured training. Like I like to challenge myself, and I do like some heart rate zone 2 rides, and I'll do like max heart rate effort once a week. I don't mind that stuff. And then trail days are whatever the trail throws at me.
Right,
But
right.
but every once in a while, like actually often I wake up and I go, this is a recovery day. It's not something I plan. My body, I wake up and I just know. Do you
Yeah.
find that?
Yes, I find as I'm getting older that recovery days are more and more important. I noticed about, 6 or 7 years ago, I've ski toured many times since, but it was the first time I noticed that recovery was really important because I went on a 7-day ski touring trip and I skied 3 days. Then I took a rest day because my feet were sore, and then I skied really hard the last 3 days. And I came home and it took me 3 days to recover because I
Yeah.
just put out so much energy. So, like, whatever I put out and how many days in a row, there's going to have to be a recovery equivalent to the amount of energy put out. So,
Same. And I think, you mentioned the sirens. I think one of the keys we know through scientific studies now is staying social. And they're a big part of your life now. And I just feel like mountain biking and having this passion for cycling has helped. As other people get to your age, their world's getting smaller. Yours seems to be at least staying the same or getting bigger.
it's been such a plus in my life because, being older, working during the week, even when I retired, I just have not had a lot of people in general to ride with. I mean, we've gone through different groups over the years, but to have this huge group of women to ride with is just such a bonus. Just such a bonus.
Do you have a message for people? Let's say they're middle age, and sometimes it's a time of change, and people either feel good about it. I felt good about it because I'm fit and healthy, and that's something to be thankful for. But what would you tell people?
As you get older, you don't beat yourself up as much. You're more accepting of yourself. You become more centered, more comfortable with yourself. That's a big bonus in mountain biking because, you're hungry. I don't know whether it's because you're hungrier or you're just less patient with yourself when you're younger. But that is the beauty of getting older is you are just more centered. So, mentally that adds to the sport, but then physically, I just think, people even if it's not mountain biking, just don't stop. And it's all relative. I did see one comment, someone said that they didn't see me sending. Well, to me, if I'm sending something that's 2 feet, it's all relative. I'm still sending. Thank you very much.
You sure are.
It feels like it to me. It's whatever feels good to you as a rider. The main thing is don't stop. Keep going. Don't give it up. Don't be discouraged if you hurt yourself because you will recover. You'll get to ride again. And, someday if it comes to, a point where you can't ride your bike, well, hopefully you can find something else. But, I just think you just got to keep churning that brain, keep the wheels going around.
And if you're not doing something, start something. Hike.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be cycling, but just start something and feel how great it feels.
Yeah.
Final question. If I'm out west and I'm going to Whistler, will you ride with me?
You bet. I'd love
All
to.
right.
That would be awesome.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you and great to meet you.
Great to meet you too.
All the best.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.